My name is Clara Stevenson, and at 34, I finally achieved my dream of owning a beautiful home in the quiet town of Willow Creek, Colorado. After years working as a successful software engineer, I had saved enough for the $2 million property. It represented everything I had worked for. What should have been the happiest day of my life turned into a nightmare. My sister, Bethany, made a shocking announcement during my housewarming party. It left everyone stunned, including me. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you enjoy family drama, hit that subscribe button. Growing up in a normal, middle-class neighborhood, our family seemed fine on the outside. We didn't have fancy things, but my parents always made sure we had what we needed. My relationship with my sister, Bethany, was always a bit tricky. Being 4 years older, Bethany often acted like a second mother to me. She helped with homework, protected me from bullies, and even let me borrow her clothes sometimes. As we grew older, our paths split. Bethany followed what my parents called the traditional route. She met Mike, her husband, in college. By 23, they were married, and by 30, she had 4 lovely children, Daisy, Olive, Fern, and Hazel, now 12, 10, 8, and 5. Bethany dropped out of college when she got pregnant with Daisy. Mike worked as a sales rep. They weren't poor, but supporting 4 kids on one income wasn't easy. I chose a different path. I focused completely on my education, earning a full scholarship to a top university for computer science. While Bethany was changing diapers, I was working at tech companies. When she was decorating her modest home, I was taking my first executive job. I worked incredibly hard for my career. I started as a junior developer, putting in 80-hour weeks for years. I missed family gatherings to meet deadlines. I gave up dating and social life to climb the career ladder. By 28, I was the youngest female chief technology officer in my company's history. By 32, a bigger tech firm hired me with an offer I couldn't refuse, doubling my already big salary. Through all those years, I lived simply. I had a nice but small apartment, drove a basic car, and invested most of my money. My one treat was travel, taking 2 trips abroad each year to relax. All the while, I was saving for something special, a home that was entirely mine. When I finally found the perfect property, I knew it was the one. A beautiful 5-bedroom home in a fancy part of Willow Creek, sitting on 2 acres of well-kept land. It had everything I had dreamed of. A modern kitchen with stone counters, a home office with built-in shelves, a sunroom overlooking a garden, a swimming pool, and a master bedroom that felt like a luxury hotel. The $2 million price tag was huge, but I had saved carefully. I could afford it without stressing about money. When I signed the papers, I felt an amazing sense of achievement. This house represented every late night, every missed holiday, every sacrifice I had made to get here. I had plans for each room. The master bedroom would be my quiet space. One bedroom would be my home office, letting me work from home. Another would be a guest room for friends. The 4th I wasn't sure about yet, maybe a library or a craft room. Planning the housewarming party was almost as exciting as buying the house. I wanted to share my joy with everyone I cared about. I invited about 40 people, colleagues, college friends, new neighbors, and, of course, my family. My parents, now in their 60s, were proud but a bit unsure about my purchase. "It's an awful lot of house for just one person," my mother commented when I first showed her pictures. I just shrugged it off, thinking it was a difference in generations. Bethany and her family were invited, of course. When I called to tell her about the house, her congratulations seemed real, but a little quiet. "That's great, Clara. We'd love to see it," she said. I noticed she didn't ask many questions about the house itself, which seems strange since she usually loved talking about home decor. In the weeks before the party, I spent every free moment making the house perfect. I hired an interior designer to help furnish the main areas. I left some rooms empty until I decided what I wanted. I ordered food from a fancy local restaurant, bought good wines, and even hired a bartender. The morning of the housewarming, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. This party wasn't just about showing off my new home. It was about putting down roots, creating a place where I could build a future, and celebrating a huge moment in my life. Little did I know, the day would be memorable for very different reasons. The morning of the housewarming party, I woke up at 6 a.m., too excited to sleep. Even though I had hired cleaners the day before, I still went through each room, adjusting pillows, straightening picture frames, and making sure everything was perfect. The caterers were set to arrive at 3 p.m., and guests would start showing up at 5 p.m. By noon, the flowers had arrived, white lilies in the entryway, colorful wildflowers in the sunroom, and elegant roses for the dining table. The bartender called to confirm the alcohol delivery had arrived, and the rental company dropped off extra chairs and serving platters. At 2:30, my mother arrived an hour earlier than I had asked her to come. "I thought you might need help," she said, even though I had everything under control. As I gave her a tour of the furnished rooms, I noticed her eyes resting on the empty spaces. "What are you going to do with all these bedrooms?" she asked, standing in the doorway of what would be my home gym, currently holding only a yoga mat and a few weights. I explained, "I have plans for each one. This will be a gym, that one's my office, the blue room is for guests." She nodded vaguely. "It just seems like a lot of wasted space for one person. Your sister could really use this much room with the girls growing up." I changed the subject, asking her to help arrange the serving platters in the kitchen while the caterers started setting up. I was used to these small comparisons and had learned to let them go. By 5 p.m., the first guests started to arrive. My colleague, Mark, and his wife brought a beautiful plant. My college roommate, Nicole, drove in from a neighboring town, amazed by the long driveway and elegant look of the house. "You've done so well for yourself, Clara," she said, giving me a tight hug. More guests came in over the next hour. My father arrived, giving me a proud smile and a rare hug. "The house is beautiful, sweetheart," he said simply, before heading to the bar for a drink. Neighbors I had met during the move came with bottles of wine and small gifts. By 6:30 p.m., the house was full of talking and laughter. The caterers were walking around with trays of appetizers. The bartender was busy mixing drinks, and everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time. I had just finished showing a group of colleagues the backyard and pool area when I checked my watch, realizing Bethany and her family still hadn't arrived. I texted her, "Everything okay? Party started an hour ago." Her response came quickly. "Running late. Mike had to finish something for work. Be there soon." At 7 p.m., just as I was thinking of starting dinner without them, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Bethany, Mike, and their 4 daughters on my doorstep. Bethany looked stressed, her hair quickly tied back, wearing a dress that looked like it was thrown on at the last minute. Mike stood behind her with a forced smile, holding a gift bag. The girls, on the other hand, were full of energy. "Sorry we're late," Bethany said, giving me a quick hug. "The girls were excited and took forever to get ready." "Aunt Clara, your house is like a castle," 10-year-old Olive exclaimed, pushing past me into the entrance. "Girls, remember what we talked about. No running in Aunt Clara's house," Mike called after them. But Daisy, Fern, and Hazel were already following their sister, their voices echoing through the high-ceilinged entryway. I led Bethany and Mike to the backyard where most of the guests were gathered. Bethany seemed distracted, her eyes darting around, taking in every detail of the house. Mike made polite conversation with my colleagues, but I noticed he kept glancing at Bethany with a worried look. "Would you like a tour?" I offered. "Absolutely," Bethany replied quickly. "The girls are probably exploring already." As I led them through the house, Bethany's comments became more pointed. In the modern kitchen, "This is bigger than our entire first floor." In the master bedroom, "Your closet could fit our girls' bunk beds." In one of the empty bedrooms, "This would be perfect for the twins. They've been sharing a room that's half this size." I noticed Mike growing more uncomfortable with each comment. When we reached my home office, Bethany lingered, running her hand over the custom desk. You know, this room gets the best afternoon light. It would make a wonderful playroom. Mike said quietly, a warning in his tone. She ignored him, moving to the window. And it's right next to what could be the girls' bedroom. Perfect setup, really. Something in her tone made me uneasy. I guided them back downstairs where dinner was about to be served. The caterers had set up a buffet in the dining room, and guests were starting to fill their plates. I noticed my mother had gathered Bethany's daughters, helping them with their food. The youngest, Hazel, was sitting on my mother's lap, sauce already staining the front of her dress. Well, I cared about. Everyone was enjoying themselves, and I had created this moment through my own hard work. If only that feeling could have lasted. Once everyone was seated with their food, I stood up at the head of the dining table, champagne glass in hand. The conversation slowly quieted as guests turned their attention to me. I want to thank you all for coming tonight, I began, feeling a warm glow of achievement. This house represents years of hard work and dreams, and having you all here to share it with me means everything. Cheers to new beginnings and good friends to share them with. Glasses clinked around the table as people smiled and took sips of their drinks. Just as I was about to sit down, Bethany suddenly stood up from her seat across the table. Her chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor, causing several guests to jump. "Since we're making announcements," she said, her voice carrying across the now silent room, "I have some exciting news of my own to share." Mike's head snapped up, his face a mix of alarm and defeat. My mother, still holding little Hazel, leaned forward with interest. Bethany took a deep breath, a strange smile forming on her face. "Mike and I have decided to make a big change. We're selling our house." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. I felt confused, but also relieved that her announcement wasn't something more dramatic. "Congratulations," I said. "Are you moving to a different neighborhood?" Bethany's smile widened as she looked directly at me. "Not exactly. We're moving in here, with you." The glass nearly slipped from my hand. "What? We're moving in with you?" she repeated, louder this time. "The girls need more space, and you have all these empty rooms. It just makes sense." The room fell into a stunned silence. I stared at my sister, sure this must be some bizarre joke, but her expression remained determined, almost defiant. "Bethany, but my mother's voice cut through. "Isn't it wonderful?" she beamed, bouncing Hazel on her knee. "The girls will have so much more room to grow, and Clara won't be rattling around in this big house all by herself." Several guests, mostly family friends who had known us since childhood, started nodding and smiling. Someone even began to clap, and to my horror, others joined in. The applause spread around the table like a wave, with congratulatory whispers. "That's so generous of you, Clara. Family taking care of family. That's what it's all about," added my father's friend, raising his glass in a toast. I stood, frozen, champagne glass still in hand, as the truth of what was happening hit me. My sister had just announced she was moving into my house without ever talking about it with me, and somehow I was being praised for it? Bethany's daughters caught the excitement of the adults around them. "We're going to live here?" Daisy asked, her 12-year-old eyes wide with wonder. "Yes, sweetie," Bethany confirmed, "and Clara has all this extra space and she wants to share it with us." "I get my own room," shouted Fern, the 8-year-old, jumping up from her seat. "Girls, settle down," Mike said quietly, but the damage was done. The children's excitement was clear, adding another layer of difficulty to the already confusing situation. My mother set Hazel down and stood up. "Let's talk about the arrangements," she said, as if this was a done deal. "The girls could take the East Wing bedrooms. And Clara, you wouldn't mind moving your office to the sunroom, would you? It gets such lovely light." Bethany nodded enthusiastically. "And we could convert that extra bedroom into a playroom for the girls. The backyard is perfect for them to run around in, and of course they'll love the pool in summer." I finally found my voice. Just wait a minute. We haven't discussed any of this." But Bethany continued as if she hadn't heard me. We'll need to rearrange some of the furniture, of course. That dining table is much too formal for the girls, and we'll need child-proof locks on the cabinets in the kitchen. Guests were starting to look uncomfortable, glancing between Bethany and me with unsure expressions. My colleague, Mark, caught my eye from across the room, raising his eyebrows in a silent question. I had no answer for him. Bethany, I tried again, my voice stronger this time. This is the first I'm hearing about any of this. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Clara, my mother interrupted. We've all known this house is too big for just you. It makes perfect sense for Bethany and her family to move in. The girls need the space much more than you do. Bethany pulled out her phone. I've actually been looking at some bunk beds for the girls' room. What do you think of these? She held up her screen, showing a page of children's bedroom furniture. Mike cleared his throat. Maybe we should discuss this privately, he suggested, looking more and more uncomfortable. There's nothing to discuss, my mother declared. Family helps family. That's how we raised you girls. The party atmosphere had completely vanished. Some guests were starting to make awkward small talk, while others were clearly listening in on our family drama. My carefully planned housewarming had gone completely wrong. Let me show you which bedroom I want, Olive announced, grabbing her younger sister's hand and pulling her toward the stairs. Girls, wait, I called after them, but they were already halfway up the staircase, their excited footsteps echoing through my new home. Bethany turned to follow them. Come on, I'll show you the layout I'm thinking of. The twins can share the blue room, and Daisy deserves her own space now that she's almost a teenager. As they disappeared upstairs, I stood in my dining room, surrounded by guests and half-eaten meals, feeling as though I had stepped into someone else's life. My dream home, my quiet space, was being divided before my eyes, and somehow I was being seen as the bad guy for questioning it. I excused myself from the remaining guests and quickly followed Bethany, my mother, and the girls upstairs. By the time I reached the second floor, Olive and Fern were already jumping on the bed and what I had planned as the guest room. Girls, please stop jumping on the bed, I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the anger and confusion building inside me. Bethany, we need to talk about this privately. I pointed toward my home office. Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of family, Bethany replied. Opening closet doors and checking storage space, these closets are huge. The girls will have plenty of room for their things. My mother was in the next bedroom, already measuring the windows with her eyes. These rooms need more colorful curtains, too plain for children. I took a deep breath, struggling to stay calm. I never agreed to any of this. This is my house, and I just moved in myself. Bethany turned to face me, her expression hardening. You have 5 bedrooms, Clara. 5. For one person. Do you know how cramped we are in our 3-bedroom house? The twins share a room the size of your master bathroom. That's not my problem, I said immediately, regretting how harsh it sounded. My mother gasped. Clara Stevenson, I did not raise you to be so selfish. It's not selfish to want to live in my own house by myself. I worked hard for this. I saved for years, and we haven't... Bethany's voice rose. Mike works 60 hours a week. I juggle 4 kids and a part-time job, but we're drowning, Clara, completely drowning. For the first time, I noticed the dark circles under my sister's eyes, the strain in her voice. Something was seriously wrong. What's going on? I asked, lowering my voice. Why are you really selling your house? Bethany's tough act cracked slightly. We're underwater on the mortgage. The housing market crashed in our neighborhood after that new factory opened nearby. We owe more than it's worth, and the bank is threatening to take our house. This was new to me. Why didn't you tell me you were having financial problems? Because you never ask, Bethany exploded. You're so wrapped up in your perfect life and career. When was the last time you asked about our money, or offered to help with the girls, or did anything that wasn't about your success? Her words stung because there was some truth to them. I had been focused on my own path, maybe at the cost of staying connected to my sister's struggles. That doesn't mean I agreed to have you move in, I countered. This is something we should have discussed privately, not announced at my housewarming party. My mother stepped between us. Clara, When I was growing up, family took care of family without question. Your grandmother lived with us for 15 years. Your uncle stayed with us when he lost his job. That's what we do. Times were different then, I argued, and those arrangements were discussed beforehand, not sprung on someone during a party. We did try to discuss it, Bethany said. I called you 3 times last week, but you were too busy with work and moving to talk more than 5 minutes. She wasn't wrong. I had been busy, rushing her off the phone to deal with contractors and deliveries. Footsteps on the stairs announced Mike's arrival. He looked uncomfortable as he entered the room. "Everything okay up here?" he asked, though it was clear things were far from okay. "Did you know about this plan?" I asked him directly. Mike hesitated, glancing at Bethany. "We discussed the possibility, but I thought we were going to ask you privately this weekend." Bethany shot him a look. "We don't have time for that. The bank called yesterday. We have 30 days. 30 days until what?" I demanded. "Until they start taking the house," Bethany admitted, her voice breaking. "We're 3 months behind on payments. Mike's pay structure changed and my hours were cut at work. And with the girls' activities and medical bills..." "So you decided the solution was to ambush me at my party and announce you're moving in?" I was shocked. "You have the space," Bethany shouted, pointing around the bedroom. "You have the money. You have everything. Would it kill you to share some of it?" My mother nodded in agreement. "Your sister sacrificed so much for you growing up. She watched you while I worked night shifts. She helped you with college applications. She's always been there for you." The guilt trip was familiar in our family. Bethany's sacrifices were often brought up whenever I was expected to do something. "That doesn't give her the right to claim my house." "It's just temporary," Bethany said, though her earlier announcement had suggested nothing temporary about it. "Just until we get back on our feet." "And how long will that be?" I asked. "A month? A year? 5 years?" Bethany didn't answer, which was answer enough. One of the girls, I think it was Daisy, appeared in the doorway. "Mom, can I have the room with the window seat?" Before Bethany could answer, I interrupted. "No one is getting any rooms because no one is moving in without my agreement." Daisy's face fell, and I immediately felt terrible. None of this was the children's fault. "Now you're making the girls cry," my mother accused. "Is your precious privacy worth hurting your nieces?" The conversation was spinning out of control. Downstairs, I could hear the murmur of guests, some probably wondering where their hostess had gone. "Bethany, this isn't just about space," I tried to explain. "This is about boundaries and respect. You should have talked to me privately instead of putting me on the spot in front of everyone." "Huh, we don't have time for your boundaries," Bethany snapped. "We need a solution now." Mike finally spoke up. "Bethany, Clara's right. We should have discussed this with her first." Bethany turned on him. "Whose side are you on? Do you want to see your daughters homeless?" "Of course not," he said quietly. "But this isn't the way to handle it." My mother threw up her hands. "I can't believe what I'm hearing. My own daughter with all this space and money refusing to help her sister in need?" The accusation hit hard. Was I being selfish? Would it really be so terrible to share my home with my sister's family? At least for a while. But then I remembered all the times in the past when temporary arrangements with Bethany had lasted forever. All the times my boundaries had been crossed with the excuse of family duty. "I never said I wouldn't help," I clarified. "But moving in together is not the only solution, and it's not one I'm comfortable with." Bethany laughed bitterly. "Of course you're not comfortable with it. Heaven forbid your perfect life be disrupted by children and chaos." "That's not fair," I began, but she cut me off. "You know what's not fair? That you have all this." She pointed around the spacious bedroom. "While my children are crammed into rooms the size of closets. That you take luxury vacations while we can barely afford a day at the beach. That you get to focus on your career while I had to give up college to raise a family." There it was, the long-held resentment that had always been under the surface of our relationship. This wasn't just about housing. It was about the different paths our lives had taken and the comparisons made along the way. "I worked hard for what I have," I said quietly. "I made different choices." You think I don't work hard? Bethany's voice rose again. Try raising 4 children. Try keeping a household together on a shrinking budget. I never said that, I defended. But your choices are not my responsibility. As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew I had gone too far. Bethany's face turned red with anger. My choices? You think my children were just choices I made to bother you? They're family, Clara. Your family. I didn't mean it like that. I tried to fix it. Yes, you did, Bethany insisted. You've always thought you were better than me because you chose career over family. Well, not all of us had that luxury. The conversation had gone far from the original issue of them moving in, bringing up decades of difficult feelings between us. I needed to get the situation under control. This isn't helping, I said. Let's go back downstairs, enjoy the rest of the party, and discuss this tomorrow when we've all calmed down. There's nothing to discuss, Bethany declared. We've already started packing. The realtor is coming on Monday to list our house. The news hit me like a punch. You've already started packing? Without even asking me? We knew you'd say yes, my mother interrupted, because that's what family does. I looked from my mother to my sister, finally seeing clearly the pattern that had defined our relationship for years. The idea that my needs were second, that my boundaries could be ignored in the name of family duty, that my success meant I owed them whatever they asked for. In that moment, something changed inside me. A lifetime of giving in to keep the peace gave way to a strong will to stand my ground. As we stood in the upstairs hallway of my new home, the tension was so thick it felt hard to breathe. Bethany suddenly fell onto the edge of the bed. Her shoulders began to shake as she covered her face with her hands. You don't understand how bad things are. We're drowning, Clara. Completely drowning. Despite my anger, my heart ached seeing my sister break down. Mike moved to sit beside her, placing a careful hand on her back. The truth is, we're not just behind on the mortgage. We've maxed out our credit cards. We've got medical debt from when Fern broke her arm last year and our insurance didn't cover all the specialists. Bethany's car needs repair we can't afford. My mother sat on Bethany's other side, putting an arm around her. They've been struggling for years, Clara, too proud to ask for help until now. I leaned against the doorframe, feeling the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. Why didn't you come to me sooner, before things got this desperate? Bethany looked up, her face streaked with mascara. Because you're my little sister. I'm supposed to have my life together. I'm supposed to take care of you, not the other way around. The admission was surprising. All these years, I'd thought Bethany saw me as the selfish one, the one who chose career over family. I never thought she might feel ashamed about needing my help. But springing this on me during my housewarming party, in front of everyone? Bethany wiped her eyes. I knew if we were alone, you'd find a way to say no gently. You'd offer money instead, or suggestions for financial planners. But we need more than that. We need a home. I thought back to our childhood, to all the times Bethany had protected me, helped me, put me first. The time she took the blame when I broke Mom's favorite vase. The summer she worked 2 jobs to help pay for my laptop for college. The countless hours she spent reviewing my college essays. But I also remember the other side of that relationship. The guilt trips, the expectation that I would always give in to whatever she needed, the quiet resentment of my success. One of Bethany's daughters, Olive, came running into the room. Mom, Clara has a pool. Can we go swimming every day when we live here? Bethany gave her daughter a watery smile. We'll see, sweetie. The kids are already packed, Mike admitted, looking uncomfortable. They've each got a box of special things they want to bring. They're excited about it. The realization that they had gone this far, allowing their children to believe this was a done deal before ever discussing it with me, made my blood boil all over again. You let them pack? You got their hopes up without even asking me? We didn't have a choice, Bethany insisted. The bank called yesterday and gave us a final notice. 30 days to get current or they start taking the house. There are always choices, I countered. You could have called me yesterday. We could have sat down privately and figured something out. My mother stood up, her patience clearly gone. Enough of this back and forth. I've already told the family you're taking them in. Your cousin Peter thinks it's wonderfully generous of you. You told the extended family? Of course. Everyone's very impressed with you for once, instead of just talking about your job. The comment stung, showing how my mother really saw my career achievements. I've even told the girls they can bring their dog. Dog? You never mentioned a dog. I don't dislike animals, but I purposely bought a house with perfect hardwood floors and expensive rugs. But he's part of the family. We couldn't leave him behind.
Just then, I heard more footsteps on the stairs, and Fern appeared at the door, holding a tablet. "Aunt Clara, look what Mom designed for your house." She pushed the tablet into my hands. On the screen was a page titled New Home Ideas. I scrolled through it in stunned silence. Bethany had created a detailed plan for changing my house. Sliding barn doors for the living room, bunk beds in 2 of the bedrooms, a play area in what was currently my home office, kid-friendly furniture to replace my carefully chosen pieces. "When did you make this?" I asked, my voice barely heard. "I've been working on it for a few weeks," Bethany admitted, "ever since we realized we couldn't keep our house." "A few weeks?" I repeated. "You've known for weeks that you were in financial trouble, that you might lose your house, and you never once picked up the phone to have an honest conversation with me about it?" "I tried," Bethany protested, "but you were always busy with work or the move." "Not too busy for something this important," I insisted. Mike stood up. "Look, this has gotten out of hand. Maybe we should go home, calm down, and discuss this tomorrow like adults." "There's nothing to discuss," my mother interrupted. "Family helps family. End of story." "It's not that simple," I said. "This is my home. I get to decide who lives in it." Bethany's face hardened again. "So that's it. You're going to let your sister and her children become homeless because you want to keep your perfect clean life?" "That's not what I said," I defended. "There are other options we can explore." "Like what?" Bethany demanded. "We've explored every option. We've cut every expense we can. We've borrowed from Mike's parents already. We've taken on extra work. There's nowhere else to turn." "You could rent a smaller place," I suggested. "With what money? And our credit is ruined from the late payments. No landlord will take us." "I could help with a down payment on a more affordable house," I offered. "In this market, there's nothing affordable within an hour of the girls' school, and we can't uproot them from their friends and activities." Every suggestion I made was met with a reason why it wouldn't work. It began to feel like Bethany had decided moving in with me was the only acceptable solution, and she wasn't willing to consider alternatives. The breaking point came when my mother said, "We'll need to clear out some of this furniture to make room for the girls' things. That glass coffee table is a hazard with children around." Something inside me snapped. This was my house, bought with my money, a quiet place I had worked toward for years, and they were already planning to take it apart before even getting my agreement. "Enough," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Everyone needs to stop making plans for my house without my permission." "It's just furniture, Clara. Things can be replaced. Family is what matters." "It's not just about the furniture," I insisted. "It's about respect. It's about boundaries. None of you have shown either since you arrived tonight." Bethany stood up, her earlier weakness replaced by anger. "Boundaries? Your nieces are about to lose their home and you're worried about boundaries?" "Yes," I said simply, "because this pattern has played out our entire lives. You decide what you need from me, ambush me with it, and make me the villain if I don't immediately agree." "That's not true," Bethany protested, but even Mike looked doubtful at that denial. "It is true," I continued, "and I've allowed it because it was easier than standing up for myself. But not this time, not with something this important." "So you're saying no?" Bethany's voice was dangerously quiet. "You're refusing to help us?"
I'm saying I won't be forced into a living arrangement I never agreed to. I'm saying I deserve to be asked about decisions that affect my life and my home. Your home, Bethany repeated bitterly. That's all you care about, isn't it? Your precious home and your precious privacy. That's not fair, I began, but she cut me off. What's not fair is that my children might be homeless while their aunt has 4 empty bedrooms in her mansion. The accusation hung in the air between us. I looked from Bethany's angry face to my mother's disappointed one, to Mike's uncomfortable expression, to the confused faces of the girls hovering in the doorway. In that moment, I realized this was about more than just a housing arrangement. It was about standing up for myself, perhaps for the first time in my relationship with my family. It was about breaking a pattern that had defined us for decades. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for what I needed to do next. I think you should all go downstairs and rejoin the party, I said calmly. I need a moment alone. Running away from the problem won't solve anything, my mother scolded. I'm not running away, I assured her. I'll be down in a minute. I just need to get something for my office. They left reluctantly, Bethany pulling her daughters ahead of her. As they went downstairs, I could hear my mother already making excuses to the guests for the hostess's long absence. Alone in the hallway, I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes, gathering my strength for what would come next. Then I walked purposefully to my home office and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. I took a moment alone in my office to collect myself, staring out the window at the well-kept backyard I had been so excited to show off to my guests just hours earlier. The party downstairs had returned to a quieter version of itself. I could hear occasional laughter and the clink of glasses, but the earlier happy atmosphere had gone. In the bottom drawer of my desk, beneath some folders, was a leather folder I had placed there just a week ago. I pulled it out, ran my fingers over the textured surface, and took a deep breath. This was not how I had planned to handle things, but Bethany's surprise had forced my hand. I tucked the folder under my arm and headed downstairs, straightening my shoulders and lifting my chin. This was my house, I reminded myself. My life, my decision.
The conversation in the living room quieted as I went down the staircase. My guests looked up with expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort. Clearly, word of the upstairs drama had spread. Bethany sat on the couch, still looking tearful but determined, surrounded by her daughters. My mother sat beside her, patting her hand kindly. Mike stood awkwardly near the fireplace, looking like he wished he could disappear into the stone. I walked to the center of the room, setting the folder on the coffee table. I want to thank everyone for their patience, I began, speaking to the entire group. Family discussions can sometimes get emotional, as I'm sure you all understand. A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the room. My colleague, Mark, caught my eye and raised his glass slightly in a gesture of support. Since this has become an unplanned family meeting, I continued, I want to thank you all for being witnesses to what I'm about to share. Bethany frowned, confusion replacing some of the anger on her face. What are you talking about? I opened the folder and removed a set of documents, keeping them face down on the table for the moment. About 3 months ago, I received a call from David Green, Mike's colleague at the pharmaceutical company. Mike's head snapped up in surprise. David called you? I nodded. He was concerned. He mentioned that you'd been asking around for loans, that things were tight at home. He thought perhaps I could help, but didn't want to overstep by telling me directly. Bethany's face flushed. He had no right. Maybe not, I agreed. But I'm glad he did, because after that call, I did some research. I turned over the first document, sliding it across the coffee table toward Bethany and Mike. This is a copy of the mortgage statement for your house. You're not just 3 months behind, as you said upstairs. You're 5 months behind, and the bank has already started taking action. Mike looked away, shame clear in his expression. Bethany's mouth opened, then closed without speaking. The second thing I learned, I turned over another document, is that your house isn't worth what you think it is. The new factory hasn't just affected your property value, it's made your house almost impossible to sell in the current market. How did you get these documents? Bethany finally managed.
I have a friend who works in real estate finance. Once I understood how serious the situation was, I wanted to help, but in my way, not by having you ambush me at a party. I turned over a third document, this one with my attorney's name at the top. So, 3 weeks ago, I purchased your mortgage debt from the bank. A stunned silence fell over the room. Even the guests who had been pretending not to listen were now openly watching the drama unfold. "What?" Bethany whispered. "I bought your mortgage," I repeated. "The bank was happy to sell the debt to avoid a messy process. I now own the loan on your house." My mother's eyes widened. "You own their house?" "In a manner of speaking, yes." I kept my voice calm and steady. "I was planning to tell you this weekend privately. I was going to offer you a solution that respected everyone's needs and boundaries." Mike stepped forward, his expression a mix of confusion and cautious hope. "What kind of solution?" I pulled out the final document from the folder, a rent-to-own agreement. "You stay in your house, but instead of paying the bank, you pay me a reduced monthly amount that you can actually afford. We set it up so that after 5 years, you have the option to buy the house back from me at a fair market value, with a portion of your rent payments counting as a down payment." Bethany stared at the document, speechless for perhaps the first time in her adult life. "This arrangement," I continued, "it gives you stability. The girls don't have to change schools or leave their friends. You don't have to cram into someone else's space. And I don't have to give up the home I just bought for myself." "You've been planning this for weeks?" Bethany finally asked. "Without telling us?" I met her gaze steadily. "Yes, just like you've been planning to move into my house for weeks without telling me." The comparison wasn't lost on Mike, who let out a short laugh. "She's got a point, Beth." My mother, however, was not so easily convinced. "But why not just let them move in with you? There's more than enough space, and families should stay together." "Because that's not what any of us truly wants," I replied firmly. "Bethany and Mike need their own space to raise their children as they see fit. The girls need stability, not a temporary solution. And I need the home I worked so hard to create for myself." I turned back to Bethany. "I was going to surprise you this weekend, take you out to lunch, explain everything, give you the good news that you wouldn't lose your house. Instead, you decided to ambush me in front of all my guests and try to guilt me into an arrangement that wouldn't have been healthy for any of us." Bethany's face crumpled, the defiance giving way to something that looked like shame. "I was desperate," she whispered. "I didn't know what else to do." "You could have trusted me," I said simply. "You could have asked for help directly instead of trying to manipulate me." Mike moved to sit beside his wife, taking the document and reading it quickly. "This is incredibly generous, Clara." "It's what family does," I said, deliberately repeating my mother's earlier words. "We help each other, but with respect for each other's boundaries and needs." The room had gone completely silent. Even my mother seemed at a loss for words, her earlier certainty shaken by this unexpected turn of events. One of Bethany's daughters, I think it was Daisy, tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Does this mean we're not moving to Aunt Clara's castle?" Bethany looked at her daughter, then at me, understanding finally dawning in her eyes. "No, sweetheart. It means we get to stay in our own home. Aunt Clara has helped us keep our house." "Oh," Daisy said, clearly disappointed. "But I wanted my own big room with a window seat." Despite everything, I couldn't help but smile at her innocent honesty. "You can come visit any time, Daisy. The guest room with the window seat will be waiting for you." The tension in the room began to disappear, replaced by a careful relief. Guests who had been frozen watching our family drama slowly resumed their conversations. Mike was still reading through the document, occasionally nodding with clear approval. Bethany stood up and approached me, her eyes red from crying but clear. "Why?" she asked quietly. "After everything I said upstairs, after how I behaved, why would you do this for us?" I considered my answer carefully. "Because you're my sister, because those girls are my nieces, because, despite everything, we're family." I paused. "But also because this solution respects everyone's needs and boundaries. It's help without dependence, support without sacrifice. For a moment, I thought she might argue further, falling back on the familiar patterns that had defined our relationship for so long. Instead, she surprised me by nodding slowly. I need to think about this. Talk it over with Mike properly. Of course, I agreed. There's no rush. The papers are already filed with the bank. Your house is safe. My mother finally found her voice. I still think family should stay together, she insisted, but with less certainty than before. We are together, Mom, I said gently, just not under the same roof. And that's okay. As Bethany returned to Mike's side to discuss the documents in quiet tones, my guests began to approach me, some offering congratulations on my new home, others making polite excuses to leave after witnessing such a personal scene. I thanked them all kindly, doing my best to save what was left of my housewarming party. Mark, my colleague, was one of the last to leave. That was quite a power move, he commented as I walked him to the door. It wasn't meant to be. I just wanted to help on my terms, not theirs. He nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes standing your ground is the kindest thing you can do for everyone involved. As I closed the door behind the last guest, I turned to face my family, still gathered in my living room. The house that had been full of laughter and conversation just hours ago now felt huge and quiet. But it was still mine. And for the first time in our adult relationship, I felt that Bethany truly saw me, not just as her little sister who owed her, but as an equal worthy of respect. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Years of old habits couldn't be broken in a single evening, but as I looked at the documents on the coffee table, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could build something healthier than what we'd had before. After the last guest left, I found myself alone in my new home. The leftovers of the party were scattered around me like proof of a life interrupted. Half-empty wine glasses, crumpled napkins, a forgotten scarf draped over a chair. The caterers had packed up and left, and my family had gone home to process everything. I moved through the room slowly, straightening cushions and gathering glasses, not yet ready for bed despite the emotional exhaustion. My mind kept replaying the events of the evening, wondering if I had handled things the right way. The next morning, I woke to a text from Bethany. Can we talk? Just the two of us. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our homes the following afternoon. Bethany looked tired but calmer than she had at the party. I want to apologize, she said after we had ordered coffee. I shouldn't have ambushed you like that. It was manipulative and unfair. Her apology surprised me. In our family, apologizing had never come easily. Thank you for saying that, I replied. I'm sorry, too, for springing my solution on you in front of everyone. She shook her head. No, you were backed into a corner. I gave you no choice. We sat in silence for a moment, feeling the weight of decades of complicated feelings between us. Mike and I talked about your offer all night, Bethany finally said. We want to accept it. It's more than generous, and it gives us a chance to get back on our feet without uprooting the girls. Relief washed over me. I'm glad. I really do want to help Bethany, just not by giving up the independence I've worked so hard for. I understand that now, she admitted. I think I've been jealous of your freedom, your success. It's easier to call you selfish than to admit my own resentment. Her honesty was refreshing, opening a door to a level of communication we'd never had before. And I've probably been insensitive to your struggles, I admitted, focused on my career to the exclusion of everything else. We've both made choices, Bethany said, echoing my words from the night before, but without the defensiveness. Different choices, but neither better nor worse than the other. Over the next few weeks, we made the arrangement official with my attorney. The terms were fair. They would pay what they could afford now, with a gradual increase as Mike's work situation improved. After 5 years, they would have the option to buy the house back, with a big part of their payments counting toward ownership. My mother was the hardest to convince. She still believed that family should live together, sharing everything without question. In my day, we didn't need all these legal documents and boundaries, she complained during a family dinner. Times change, Mom, I said gently. This arrangement gives everyone what they need: dignity, independence, and security. Slowly, she began to accept that this was how it would be, especially when she saw how Bethany and Mike's relationship improved once the immediate money pressure was gone. I started therapy around this time, working through the complex feelings of guilt and duty that had shaped so much of my relationship with my family. My therapist helped me see that setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was necessary for healthy relationships. You can love someone deeply and still need your own space, she reminded me during one session. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges that allow us to connect safely. 3 months after the difficult housewarming, I invited Bethany and her family for dinner at my home. This time the visit was relaxed, without hidden motives. The girls explored the house with my permission, and yes, they even got to swim in the pool. "Your aunt's house is pretty cool, huh?" I overheard Mike saying to Olive as they looked out at the backyard. "Yeah," she agreed, "but I like our house too. I have all my friends there." Their simple exchange confirmed what I had believed all along, that what the girls really needed wasn't more space, but stability and security in the home they already loved. Bethany and I started a new tradition: monthly sister dinners, just the two of us, alternating between our homes. During these dinners, we talked openly about things we'd never discussed before: our hopes, fears, regrets, and dreams. I learned about her struggles with motherhood, her abandoned dreams for a career in interior design. She learned about my loneliness sometimes, my questions about whether I'd focus too much on career at the expense of building a family of my own. "It's never too late," she told me during one such dinner, 6 months after the housewarming. "Look at us, rebuilding our relationship after years of bad communication. Some things are worth the wait." The relationship with my nieces grew in unexpected ways. With the pressure off, I found I genuinely enjoyed spending time with them. Daisy, with her artistic talent, often came over to paint in my sunroom. Fern, the athlete of the family, loved swimming in my pool. I became the aunt I had always wanted to be, not burdened by duty, but connected through real affection. As for my dream home, it remained my quiet space, but I learned to share it in ways that felt good to me. I hosted family dinners once a month. I invited the girls for occasional sleepovers in the guest room with the window seat that had so fascinated Daisy. I even adopted a cat, deciding that perhaps my perfect home could use a little bit of chaos after all. A year after the fateful housewarming party, we gathered again in my home. A much smaller group this time, just family. As we sat around the dining table, Bethany raised her glass in a toast. "To Clara," she said, "who taught us that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set a boundary." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible in my family relationships. "And to new beginnings," I added. "It's never too late to change the patterns of the past." Later that evening, as I stood in my kitchen loading the dishwasher, my mother approached me. She had been quieter than usual during dinner, watching rather than telling. "You know," she said, leaning against the counter, "I was wrong that night." I paused, a plate in midair. "About what?" "About family always needing to live together, share everything." She sighed. "Your way turned out better for everyone. Bethany and Mike have their dignity and independence, the girls have stability, and you have your beautiful home just as you deserve." Coming from my mother, this was nothing short of a huge change. I set down the plate and turned to face her fully. "Thank you for saying that, Mom. It means a lot." She nodded, looking around my kitchen with new eyes. "You've created something beautiful here, Clara. Not just this house, but this new way for our family to support each other while respecting each other's space." As she left that night, she hugged me tighter than usual. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, words I had waited a lifetime to hear. The journey wasn't over, of course. Old patterns had a way of coming back in stressful times, but we had laid a new foundation, one built on mutual respect rather than duty and guilt. My home remained my sanctuary, the physical sign of all I had worked for. But I came to understand that true security wasn't found in square footage or property papers. It was found in relationships where love and respect lived together, where helping didn't mean losing yourself, where family bonds were made stronger by healthy boundaries rather than weakened by resentment. Standing on my back porch that night, watching the stars appear one by one above my beautiful yard, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with material things. I had not only claimed physical space for myself in this world, but emotional space as well. The right to define my own life, even within the complex web of family relationships. What's your experience with family boundaries? Have you ever had to stand your ground even when it was difficult? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life lessons. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to clearly define where you end and they begin. Thank you for listening to my story today. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.